Tim Dore, welcome to Power Hour Ventures podcast, where we breed billionaires. I have had the absolute pleasure of getting to know you over the years now. And, I've been so impressed and I've learned so much from you over time. Give us a little background on who you are, what you do, and we'll chit-chat kind of in and out all sorts of subjects over the next little bit.
Fantastic. Well, first, thanks for having me. Mm-hmm. It's always a joy to spend some time with you, Zach, and I learned from you as well, and it's been a great pleasure getting to know you over the years.
Yep, thanks.
My background, I'm lawyer by trade, and practiced law on and off in a variety of different ways through early 2000s up through the mid 2010s, a little past 2010, and enjoyed it. Have always been a lawyer. You got to make money, but
always have to survive.
I have to do it to survive. But I also want to be the person who doesn't feel like I gouged somebody or I'm just doing it just for the money. I've always had a pride in that. I try to make sure that we're trying to get to the best solutions possible. People say, well, you're an attorney. I'm like, yeah, I'm more of a counselor of law than I am an attorney at law.
And I can totally second that from working with you on so many different scenarios. Yeah.
So I did that. And then what's always been, I guess, the bug that bit me early in college and has always continued throughout my life, even through today, is the political bug. And I was bitten, worked on political campaigns. In fact, my first sort of law job was representing different political candidates at different political levels all over the nation.
Yeah.
Great opportunity to meet great people.
Yeah.
And who I think for the most part, all of them, even though they're politicians, are still doing it for the right reasons.
Sure.
Trying to make this world a better place.
Yeah.
That bug never went away. And in 2012, I decided to take that leap myself, become the politician. So the lawyer jokes weren't enough. I'll make some politician jokes to go with it.
Right.
So I was a state representative in the state of Colorado from 2012 through 16. And really, I'd seen so much as it was, and had the opportunities to work with Congress, the federal levels, work with the state legislatures throughout many states. But the perspective it gives you when you go on the other side of the glass, like I like to say, it's that you're inside the chamber. You actually have the opportunity to vote on legislation. You get to draft and carry legislation yourself. You become the solution, part of the solution process, not just pushing somebody else's solution.
Right.
But pushing your own solution to different issues. So it really gave me a unique perspective, I think, that only anybody that's elected has had it. And if you use it right, you can really do good things with it.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, today I don't see it as much.
Yeah. Well, that's always a balance, and that's balance of power, right? That's totally understand. And so one of the things that we always have kind of gotten into is business. And I've consulted with you around so many different concepts, ideas, how to approach things. And Power Hour is just full of business owners, right? When we look at our business owners or somebody looking to start a business here in Colorado, what would you say are some of the biggest hurdles or tidbits that they should be aware of, and knowledge, right? Because knowledge is power, right? Yeah. Ignorance is bliss. Knowledge can be power or suffering, right? So what would you tell people, that would, need services from a person like you? What are some ideas to really kind of think about in that area?
That's a good question. I often think of that question in the form of, even though you may not want to get into politics, and I don't suggest that to anybody if you don't have the stomach for it.
Right.
You've also got to have a political lens on whatever you do, and that's business owners at any levels. Because ultimately, we live in a world right now, especially this country, where a business has to be aware of the regulations that may be in front of it. And those regulations can make life very, very difficult if you decide either to ignore them or not understand them. Because then you're spending a lot of money potentially on lawyers to try to get you out of trouble if you're lucky. Or you're just done.
You got to adapt or die, right?
Or the government shuts you down.
Yeah.
And so for me, a lot of the clients that come to me say, hey, I've got this great business idea, fantastic. Do you have the things in place? And accountants, the right people to do your books, all those things, absolutely. You want to stay on the up and up on that, because one of the biggest regulators is the IRS. You don't want to get in trouble with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the other ones you don't think about sometimes, depending on what your business is, you're always going to have other regulators. And in the state of Colorado, it may be the Department of Regulatory Affairs. And under that, you've got real estates. And I think for the most part, if you're a business, if you're a masseuse, if you're a gardener, there's going to be regulations you need to be aware of and make sure you're complying with. And it's unfortunate. I do think our country has gotten to where regulations have gone beyond what their purposes were. I mean, I'm not saying don't have regulations.
Of course, of course.
I mean, I don't want toxic waste thrown into the river.
Right.
But at the same time, government is using regulations in a lot of ways now to constrict and control businesses of all sizes.
Yeah.
To get around that, or at least to be able to work with it, you just have to know the game. And I think that's where I can bring a lot of the solutions to the table. It's talking to the right people.
Yeah.
So often it's just calling the government official, calling that regulator and just saying, hey, am I doing this right? I want to make sure I'm not going to go crossways with you.
Yeah.
That'll save you a ton of time and a ton of money
Right.
to make sure it's done right. And so I do coach my clients on, let's get this done right. Let's make sure we're crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's when it comes to potential regulation problems. And then if we run into a problem and we've already developed some level of relationship, it's a lot easier to solve them
Yeah.
than it is to go in there and be
Correct.
like, they're about to hit you over the head with a hammer.
And shut you down,
Yeah.
right? You know, and you bring up a really interesting concept around governance. You know, and I always put it in this analogy, like, okay, let's just say there's two people in the world, Tim and I. Where are we going to go to lunch today? You and I can figure that out. You know, and then all of a sudden, let's say that we add 5 more people to the mix. Well, somebody may have an allergy to something, somebody may not like something. So, you know, it gets a little bit more complicated. Okay, now let's go to 100 people. Now all of a sudden, you got 100 different issues, and let's multiply that, let's go to 1 million people. Well, now all of a sudden, you have to put some sort of guidelines or rails or governance, right, in place to really kind of make sure there's not anarchy.
Yeah.
So is there a place for government governance and all these things and regulation? 100%. But it's to the point now where is overstepping those boundaries, right? You know, and that's a really interesting concept.
That's absolutely right. I think for me, it's always been, there's as you say, balance. Governance is one thing, to make sure we're protecting the people that need to be protected because you could do something stupid as a company or something bad that could injure others.
Right.
Then there's where you go beyond that line. And it's no longer governance, now it's control.
Right, right.
And that's where I see the problems that we have with government so often, is they come and they want to, we don't need to regulate everything. The best regulator is the free market.
Efficient market's frontier.
Yep.
It will always find its right price because there's always a buyer and a seller.
If you're a bad business, you'll go out of business. If you're a good
Correct.
business, you'll grow.
Right.
People will come to that.
Right.
That's the best regulator.
Right, right.
And so, unfortunately, I don't think that's where we start anymore. You know,
It is a unique playground right now, you know, and there's been a big shift in Colorado politics. I mean, we have a new mayor, and you know, it'll be interesting to see what comes of Denver over the next, you know, 4, 10, 20 years. I mean, how long have you been in Colorado for?
Oh, born and raised.
Born and raised,
Yes.
yeah, me as well. That's right, and that's what I thought. But you know, like looking back to when we grew up in this state, it's so different. You know, I mean, gosh, in the '80s it was mostly oil and gas. You know, and then as you know, the city kept growing. Now we have finance, oil and gas, tech. You know, and all these different industries.
And it doesn't matter what business you are. You know, if you're a candle maker, if you're a tech operation, when it comes to government, and when I say government, it's not just the state, it's not just the feds, it's your local government as well. It's, you know, who's your town council, who's your county commissioners, who are the people that are on these different commissions and committees and such that you're going to run into through your businesses. And it may be just the engagement even with a library board or something within your community. But what I've learned, and I always tell my clients, is you have 2 choices when it comes to involvement. You can be at the table and help the discussions go further. Give your input to whatever the government's trying to decide. Talk to your local officials, the elected officials, and the stakeholders that are in there. Or you can be on the menu. And that doesn't give you much options except you're going to get your butt kicked at some point. And that to me, and I know that gets challenging because it means for a lot of people, either they don't have the time to do it.
Right.
And that's where we can help out, or I can help out with that. Or it's a little out of their comfort zone.
Right.
Or you want me to engage with people who are, because the elected officials are just as human as you and I are.
Absolutely.
And you will find that when you start engaging them.
Yeah.
And they will be welcoming to new ideas as you come in. Here's what my business can bring to the community. Here's what I want to do. And they'll look for partnerships for you as well. Can you help sponsor something going on in the community? Can you help? And those build longevity for your business within the community. You'll get known, you'll get more buyers, whatever it is, customers, clients, whatever you may be looking for.
Yeah.
And that's how businesses succeed long term.
It's an interesting concept. I'm thinking about all the people that get involved with cities, councils, etc. I don't see a lot of youth in those situations. And tell me if I'm wrong, and direct me, because this is more your expertise. How does the youth get involved? And would that be good? Or, what do you think about that?
It's absolutely great. I mean, the youth need to be involved, because if the youth aren't going to be involved, then when the youth become that next generation, the involvement's going to be non-existent.
Yeah.
The challenge, I think, is getting the youth involved from understanding why they're getting involved. I do think youth are involved in levels of politics today and levels of policy, but so often it's much more as an advocate. They're getting involved in an issue that they happen to be passionate about, which is wonderful. But when they get passionate about one particular issue, and they get a little older and whatever, and you're getting into the business world, those may not always match.
Right.
The tactics are always the same, though, right? It's involvement. It's engagement. It's going to learn about where's your elected officials stand. Too often, I think, and we see it a lot more in today's environment, instead of walking in to get to know your elected official, to maybe work with them, to bring them new ideas that they may be able to take, percolate, and bring something out of it. It's more they walk in with an axe to grind, and they throw the axe on the table and are like, you're either going to believe in the way I believe in this, or I'm not going to have anything to do with it, and you become enemy number one. Really bad way to do things, but too often that's where we go. So when I think the question is the youth involved? Yes. Are they involved in the right way? No. And how do we get, and that's where I think finding the young entrepreneur, the young person who's maybe just a few years out of college, or maybe not even out of college yet, looking to what can I do with my life? What businesses can I get involved with? And letting them understand there's more than just going and go to the office, or they're more than just working at the desk, answering the phone call, whatever it may be. You have to have bigger picture ideas. How do you help your company? What's the involvement like? Going to such, and the companies and the businesses can do a much better job of making it part of an overall culture, a culture of civil engagement. I was on a plane yesterday, and was listening to a podcast, and the work that John Kennedy did as president came up quite a bit. Don't ask what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country type of attitude. And Peace Corps comes out of that. The ideas of your engagement is not just sitting back and bitch about your government.
That's right.
The engagement is do something.
Get involved.
Be part of that civic involvement. And there are ample opportunities. If you were to open up the governor's webpage in Colorado and look at all the open seats on the boards and commissions, it's insane.
How do you get to that? So our people can look at that?
Just submit your name. You can go to the, I don't have the website in front of me, but it's the state, you can type in, go to Google, whatever, and type in Colorado State Government Boards and Commissions.
Interesting.
You will see there are hundreds of commissions. A lot of them are more regulatory in nature. But private citizens sit on them.
Interesting.
Great opportunity to get involved in certain things. There's commissions on water, commissions on banking, commissions on, you name it, there's probably a commission for it.
Interesting.
And there's open vacancies all over the place.
I encourage our listeners to take a look at that, because what a great way to get involved. And we're sitting in this weird political environment where everything's so polarized right now, right? The right or the left, or neither. And what I've always done with my clients is I lay out 10 policies, and I say, what do you like and what do you not like? Every one of them falls right in the middle. And I always say, and they always say, do you want everybody to be educated? Absolutely. Do you want everybody to eat? Absolutely. Do you want to have the ability to grow and innovate and capitalize? Absolutely. Everybody wants everything, but at the same token, it doesn't mean that you're just on this side or that side, right? And so you got to kind of figure it out a little bit. And
that's the best way to be. And if you want to be a successful business, I would always advise any client comes through, don't put your political color out front. I mean, you will definitely attract one side or the other, and then the other side will want to torch your place. So be that, as you're saying, that common ground area. Freedom of speech, your freedom to express that, fantastic. But if you're gonna have a successful business, you need to figure out how you do it so it doesn't hurt your business.
Well, because you gotta be able to adapt through all the different regulations, and this goes back to our first part. When regulations are changing, it may be for the better, maybe for the worse. So.
Well, and when you do it right, you'll start getting. What I do all the time is being in front of the regulations. So that allows you the opportunity to go in, and it's much easier to have the discussion with the lawmaking group, be it the legislature or the city level, whatever it may be, about what are you trying to do? how that's going to affect, do you really know how it's going to affect a business like mine if you're the client?
Right.
And how can we make it so that it either won't have that effect or maybe not do the regulation at all? Maybe it's not necessary. Too often government solutions, I call them sledgehammers. There'll be a fly on the wall and we could have easily gotten a fly swatter and taken care of the fly, but instead they get the sledgehammer.
Yeah.
And they get the fly. But the collateral damage is significant.
Right. Right.
And that's what then we have to deal with as lawyers. Now your business falls within the collateral damage. You're in this net that was not intended for you.
Right.
But it caught you.
Yeah.
Now we got to figure out how do we walk through this maze. Had we been there before, had we been there when this was a discussion, before it was voted on, before it became law, and started either modifying it or amending it or maybe killing it, the situation will be quite different for the business. And that's what and I know that most businesses don't have time to pay attention to everything, and that's why I highly recommend that they engage somebody like myself to help them engage this, to figure it out, come up with a game plan. I'll guarantee it. In fact, they aren't allowed to under law. They're not regulating one business by itself. They're not going to regulate Zach.
Right. That's right. That's right. That's right.
And so if somebody else is going to be in this net that's been created through the regulation, and that if we can get there before that net becomes the net, we can work as a coalition, we can do things, makes life a lot easier in the long run.
Yeah. Well, you always bring such great knowledge base, the depth and breadth of your knowledge and resources. I absolutely love it. And I'm so thankful to have you in my life and everybody around us.
Great.
So thank you for being with us today. We'll definitely have more conversations in the future. Tim Dore, if anybody needs services, please always reach out. So.
Absolutely. Thanks, Zach.
Thanks so much.
Take care.